Hi, everybody. Another strong performance last week when we learned about labor market imperfections and non-competitive models for a labor market. Once again, great work with the team discussions. Some highlights from there. Overall, there was kind of a 50-50 break between those groups who believed that the bilateral monopoly was the most appropriate model for capturing labor markets in the professional sports industry versus those groups that actually found the competitive model to be most applicable. From team one, Emily made a good point about power on both sides of the market aren't exactly the same in terms of players and owners, and how this power dynamic can be influenced by whether or not we're dealing with an open or a closed league. I thought that was an interesting and really good point to make. Team two found the competitive model to be most applicable to capturing labor markets in the professional sports industry. I just want to point out that it's important to recognize that the competitiveness of sports themselves does not necessarily mean that athletes are hired in a competitive labor market, although, of course, that model certainly does have its many uses. Amongst those in Team 3, here was another case where the competitive model people believed was the most applicable to the professional sports industry. Here, the focus was on the idea that there's many buyers and sellers as to why the competitive model was most appropriate. However, just note that a team's offer is no good if not accepted by the league. And second, players, while of course independent individuals, cannot engage in transactions that are not within the conditions specified by the union's collective bargaining agreement. So that while, yes, there are many teams, they in many ways have actions which are dictated by the single league. And while there's many players, their actions in many ways are dictated by the single union. Once again, though, I certainly don't want to say that the competitive model does not have its uses when analyzing labor markets in professional sports. Team 4 found the bilateral monopoly to be most appropriate, and Team 5 found the competitive market to be most appropriate. James, in particular, mentions the degree of substitutability as being a reason the competitive model is appropriate. However, we should recognize that in competitive markets, we're dealing with perfect substitutes, so that this is definitely going to be a very rough approximation, and perhaps not even appropriate when dealing with professional athletes. And also, of course, there's not free entry and exit, at least in a closed league, which is a necessary condition for a competitive model. Lastly, Team 6 also found the competitive market most appropriate. Olivia made a really good point in that it kind of depends on how you define the market. Are we talking about the market for all basketball players, for example, or are we talking about the market for a star player? Meaning, if we're considering all players, maybe the competitive model is most appropriate. However, if we're considering the market for, let's say, LeBron James, well, then clearly there we're not dealing with a competitive market structure. Good point. We would simply need different models depending on the focus of our question. So, hard to believe we only have 2 more weeks to go. This week we'll finish our discussion on labor markets in professional sports, when we'll turn our attention to how economists analyze and measure discrimination in labor markets. The solutions to problem set 3 are available on Blackboard. The final problem set is now available, along with narrated PowerPoint slides and a new team discussion question. As always, please let me know if you have any questions. Let's finish strong, keep up the good work, stay well, and I'll see you online.